Ladies and gentlemen, football is finally back in our lives. I probably said something similar to that last week, but it's actually back this time because the first game of the season has been played, and oh, what a first game it was that we'll be covering here and more on this week's edition, the 73rd episode of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. It's probably a little bit more than that, because there's a pilot episode and probably one more unnumbered episode in there somewhere, but we'll say it's a solid 73 episodes here. And these two gentlemen have been joining me the entire time. Save, weeks off for them, but they still send in videos. But it has been the three of us, your triumvirate trio that causes trouble here on the show. And we are back yet again for another full NFL season. And guys, I'm excited for it. And of course, doing the intro myself, Iceman Jurg, joined by my compatriots of chaos as always. First at the bottom of the screen for the beautiful people, the games master of this program, the future game show host of America, who will get to choose the game, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. He has the opportunities. He chooses the contract. The people are going after him. He's like a free agent, sought after. Justin, how we doing, brother?
I'm doing well, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's a beautiful day. The sun is shining. It's not going to be 95 degrees outside for no reason. At least I think not. I hope not. Because there's been a random heat check the last couple of days. My God, it's been hot. Absurdly hot in New York for absolutely no reason whatsoever. Speaking of which, an absurdity, the man who always gives us mind-blowing facts, the man who last season gave us our temporary mascot. And we have a new one, ladies and gentlemen, that we'll get to here in a very, very brief moment, as you can see on the bottom left. Before we get to the bottom left, we must go to the top left. The man, the myth, the legend. Well, he's not a myth because he's actually existing on your screen. The Podfather himself, Podfather Rick. How are we doing, Rick?
If I was a myth, what myth would I be? I'm trying to think about something along those lines. Maybe I'd be like, the Norse god of thunder and excitement and stupidity. Something like that, yeah. Get the little Viking presence there going. Listen, I'm thrilled. I'm excited. We've been waiting for this for a very long time. I am the backlog admin of the pick challenge, as you can clearly see by my whole thing. And this is also last year's standings too, by the way. So I've got everything here on lock. I'm a nerd when it comes to this stuff, so I'm excited for this. This is going to be great.
And we greatly appreciate the fact that you are doing that for us because Lord knows me and Justin would have trouble keeping up. We could barely keep our own picks from time to time. So
yeah, you do what you can.
It's perfect for us. And of course, the last member of the crew this season that turns us into a fearful four. Now, I was going to say foursome, but, not trying to give those connotations. Let's just say we're a big four now, yet again on the show, ladies and gentlemen. Other way. The Pirate is here.
See, I was going to go with a golf reference because that's, you play foursomes in golf too. So
see, I don't really play golf.
But you should. It's a lot of fun. Even mini golf is fun.
Mini golf I have played.
Yeah, mini golf's a good time.
I've been decent at it. But,
windmills and pirate ships and all of that, it's great.
So, the windmill.
Yes, the windmill.
The few times I've gone mini golfing, windmill has never hit my golf ball.
Really?
Never. I'm talking about the spinning wheel because sometimes the wheel's low enough where it can get your ball. Has never hit my ball yet.
I had a hole once where there was a water hazard in the front of the hole that was shaped like the Mario Kart mushroom.
Really?
Yeah, it was actually quite fun. I hit it right in there because
got to.
Tried to be cool and wanted to hit it over the water, and didn't work.
Got to play the short game. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, Billy Shakes is here on the show. He is going to take Sandoval's role from last season of being the fourth compatriot in our pick challenge to see if he will rival Rick in points this season. It'll be similar rules for him, such as it was for the Deer last year. We will get to that momentarily when we do get to the pick challenge to end the program. But will Billy Shakes play a similar role in making Justin fail, I should say, in the trivia? TBD. But before we get to that, of course, we have a mind-blowing fact of the week. I feel like it's been a while since I've been here in person for a mind-blowing fact of the week. Because I feel like I missed one or two in those weeks that I was being held up by, circumstances that included Xfinity and, baseball in Williamsport factors. So, Rick, the floor is yours. What's this week's mind-blowing fact that I'm finally here for yet again?
So, today I'm going to tell you the story of the Ballad of Bobby Singh. And I think this is very interesting because Bobby Singh is one of those football players that you may never have heard of, and yet maybe one of the most decorated and celebrated players of all time across various forms of football. So Bobby Singh was born in Fiji back in 1975 to parents of Indian descent, and he moved to British Columbia, Canada when he was 2 years old. He was very active in all sorts of sports when he was in high school, then graduated, went to the University of Hawaii, where he played sparingly for the Rainbow Warriors, but was a guard for the team. He transferred to Portland State afterwards, graduating with a degree in sociology, and attempted to go for the NFL draft. He was not drafted in the NFL draft. However, in the very first round of the 1999 Canadian College Draft, the Calgary Stampeders selected Bobby Singh. He did not play with the Stampeders in '99, however, signing as a free agent with the St. Louis Rams, where he would go on to be on the practice squad of the Super Bowl winning team, therefore earning himself a Super Bowl ring. He didn't last long in the NFL, though, as he then decided to go under back surgery and missed the 2000 season for recovery. In 2001, he took a very interesting shot, an odd opportunity on a fledgling league led by a crazy man named Vincent Kennedy McMahon, and he joined the LA Extreme. And in the 1 year of the XFL, Bobby Singh played in 6 regular season games, 2 playoff games, and won the $1 million game. So therefore, he has an NFL championship and an XFL championship. But wait, there's more. He ended up going back to Calgary in 2002, signing with the Stampeders, and was a starter in the 5th game of the season and played 16 regular games. He was a finalist for both the Outstanding Canadian Award and the Outstanding Offensive Lineman Award in 2003. In 2005, he went to the British Columbia Lions, where he ended up, playing in the West Championship game. And then, towards the end, in 2006, he played in the Grey Cup with the BC Lions, which the Lions won over Montreal 25-14. The ballad of Bobby Singh, gentlemen, is that he is the only player in football history to be an NFL champion, an XFL champion, and a CFL champion. At least until Cardell Jones wins all 3 of them at some point in his career. So there you go.
Wow. Look at that. Well, for Cardell Jones, then you would add a college championship in there.
You would do that. That's right.
And I think that then he would have the first ever distinction for that as well.
I think he would. Yes.
Wow. Look at that. Just champions. That's what the show is all about. It's just champions. Look at that. Yeah.
I figured you'd enjoy that because we're talking about week 1 of the Sports Agents of Chaos. We had the Super Bowl champions go down on Thursday, and it could be some foreshadowing to the Pick Challenge champion going down this season.
There's a reason why I wore this shirt today.
We're all
champion.
We're all gunning for you, Jurg. We're all gunning for you.
Champion. Don't forget it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget that.
We're all gunning for you.
All right. Well, someone has to vie for, getting my attention and defeating me in some way, shape, or form. So, but amazing one right there, Rick. As per usual, you absolutely deliver on it. And let's continue with the games here, from the mind-blowing fact master to the games master, Justin. And also, Rick, I think Rick's title can basically officially be on a business card. Knower of arbitrary facts. I think that would be.
I like it.
Because he just knows everything.
I humbly accept that title.
I humbly accept that title. Perfect. All right, Justin, what do we got for some trivia this week? I feel like we got a good one in the chamber for this one.
All right, fellas, we are going with some week 1 trivia this week.
Sammy Watkins.
All right, I'll think of a new question. Give me. No, guys, can you tell me the most successful team in week 1? Who has the most wins?
Ooh.
And you know what? Since you guys like to make multiple guesses, why don't you just give me the top 3?
Oh, well, that's what we're going to do. Come on now. This is how we do it. What credence do you give, Jerk, to a team being around for a very long time? Potentially.
I would give a little bit, but it's also about peaks and valleys of the franchise's history. So when you consider things, I would say, respectfully, Rick, the Bears, I could see them maybe in the top 5 or 6, but they've had a lot of lean years. That I think kind of like takes them down a couple notches. I think of teams that have been around for a long time. The first team that comes to mind to me would be the Steelers. Honestly, that's a team that's been very successful, as we know. Has even in the last couple of years had some shocking week 1 wins that when we thought that they were going to lose. I think the last couple of seasons they beat the Bengals and the Bills in week 1. Like it's pretty good. So I think the Steelers would definitely be a team that comes to mind. And this team, I think would probably be top 3. I'm not sure if they'd be number 1, but I think the Packers just because, again, you have the 3-decade span of Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. And before that, when you had Bart Starr, you were basically like 5 NFL championships and the first 2 Super Bowls. Like, there's way too much winning for that team for me to like. If they're not top 3 minimum, I would be vehemently surprised.
So I'm thinking along the same lines as you, because I'm thinking that there are 3 teams in the NFC North that could be very high up in these rankings because of longevity purposes. The Packers, I think, are probably number 1. I think the Bears could be up there, but I also think the Lions could be up there too, because I think that in the run of Detroit, even though they haven't had a lot of playoff success, they're a team that really fools you, and they're a team that I think has a lot of early season success that gets you excited. So even what we saw this week, which we'll talk about, I think the Lions could be a good shot there too. But I like your Steelers pick as well. So I think we hit on 4 very good teams, to be honest with you. So I think we could guess any which order we'll probably be in the ballpark with this.
Yeah, and I think, Rick, if Justin's trivia as of late has been any factor, there's a reason he's bringing this up now. The Lions or the Chiefs have to be at least in the top 5 for sure. So.
Well, I don't think Kansas City, because they although they got to the Super Bowl early, they're not a team that had a lot of early success. Like, they won Super Bowl 4, and that was pretty much it for a very long time. So if you think about it. So, but I think the Lions might be up there too. So
let's first guess Pittsburgh Steelers.
All right. The Pittsburgh Steelers are second all time with 46 wins, 36 losses.
Okay. All right.
Pretty good.
Very good. Very good. I won't steal your Packers picks. I think it's number 1. So I will fill out the top 3 because I think Justin challenged us and we have to do this properly. So I will go for the Detroit Lions.
The Detroit Lions are third with 44 wins.
There we go. And in, we assume, first place, the Green Bay Packers, Justin?
The Green Bay Packers are number 1. They are the only team with 50 wins.
Wow. Okay. All right. And just for S&Gs, where are the Bears in the standing?
The Chicago Bears are 4th all time with 42 wins.
Yeah. Which again, I that was my why I said longevity, because
right.
I feel like, those teams that were in around the Canton area where the NFL was basically founded have been around for so long that it's obviously going to be one of those teams that was there. So
well, here's a quick one. Who has the most ties week 1?
Justin has the most ties week 1.
Not the Houston Texans. Most ties.
Well, so again, I think you go back to longevity, because there were a lot of, before overtime even started, there were a lot of games that ended in ties back in like the 40s, 50s, 60s.
Right.
So I think Pittsburgh.
There were a lot of defensive battles for the Steelers for sure.
Yeah, I think so. Let's run with it.
Yeah, I say Steelers.
Pittsburgh at 5.
Wow. Yeah, listen,
you never know what's going to happen this week.
You never know.
Well, we try to know.
will we get a Steelers Niners tie?
Oh,
I'm not picking.
Who picked that?
Yeah.
Well, somebody here on the show, I won't say who, has the first pick in the challenge this year. So
it's the Pirate, of course, obviously.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. All right, Justin, outstanding trivia, as you always do, my man. That was a phenomenal one. Here's the thing. Even when we get it pretty quickly, like we did today, it's brain games. And it's an absolute, mind tester. It makes you go back. And for someone like myself who, is decent at NFL knowledge, but, as we go farther back, I'm very much, this is a struggle. It's always fun to have these all-time questions. So, as per usual, it's greatly appreciated what you got.
Yeah, well, that's how we do it. And by the way, just so in case you're wondering if Billy gets any trivia questions right, Justin, he's on Opera for his service provider instead of Bing. So
as long as he stays off Google, I guess, or Bing.
Yeah.
Perfection. All right, well, Justin, that does it for trivia, but we do have one more game this week, ladies and gentlemen. We have Fact or Fiction. Is it the statement that we get? Is it a fact? Is it fiction? Will we both be wrong no matter, even if we both say separate answers?
Depending on, yeah, it could be.
It's probably happened at least once. We'd have to go back in the archive for that. But
yeah.
That being said, Justin, what do we got this week?
All right, fact or fiction. the Kansas City Chiefs are okay with the weapons they currently have. Now, I don't know if everyone watched. I'm assuming you guys both watched last night, or Thursday night rather, the game where the Kansas City Chiefs had a little bit of trouble getting things going on offense on certain drives. They missed Kelsey sorely. They hope will be back for week 2, but if he goes down again, are the Kansas City Chiefs going to be okay with the weapons that they have?
So you could tell that Travis Kelce was sorely missed. I mean, Noah Gray did okay as their tight end, and Blake Bell had his moments, but this is kind of why I tied into the question that I asked you, Justin, about a week ago with 2 weeks ago with is Chris Jones the second most important player on the Kansas City Chiefs roster? I think we answered that question by no, he's not. He's probably third at this point behind Mahomes and Kelsey. Are they okay with the weapons they have? Yes, I'm going to say yes, because I feel like this was a bit of an anomaly game. I think we've now started the new curse of the Super Bowl winners playing on opening night. Look, if you take out Kadarius Toney and you take out the fact that they didn't have Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice played pretty well for them, the rookie that they got out of SMU, and MVS played pretty well. Justin Watson played pretty well too. So I think they are okay. What I think needs to happen though in this offense is that they need to kind of go away from the way that Patrick Mahomes used to play, which was spreading the ball around to 12 guys at once. I think now you've got to lock in on like your top like 6 or 7. Maybe you'll find Toney a little later, but you've got Justin Watson, you've got Marcus Valdes-Scantling, you've got Rashee Rice. When Kelsey comes back, you have him. And then you can always use McKinnon or Pacheco in the backfield and swing out and make a few plays here. So I think they're okay with the weapons they have, but I think they need to kind of narrow their game a little bit, because if this is Matt Nagy's offense and not Eric Bieniemy's offense or Andy Reid's offense, it's not the same kind of run. But I think they're going to – listen, they're still the defending Super Bowl champions for a reason. So unless proven otherwise, they're fine with what they got.
Yeah, I think short term they'll be fine. I think this will be a question that would be interesting to bring back up come the trade deadline. And will the Kansas City Chiefs maybe be a bit aggressive come the trade deadline? Because I think realistically there might be a couple wide receivers that could be available come trade deadline season, depending on how certain teams perform. Tampa, and I think Kansas City you could consider being a buyer as we get closer to the halfway point of the season. But I think if you're talking about right now, if we're just strictly speaking the first let's say month of the season or so, I think they'll be fine with it. And I actually saw this point in the comment section that I thought was a really good point to bring up. The Kansas City Chiefs defense, if it played better than some people thought it would, is because they had multiple weeks to prepare without Chris Jones. The offense only had a few days without Travis Kelce. And you're forcing some of these wide receivers to take on bigger roles than what they expected to early on. I think we saw that some of these guys are maybe ready for that and some of them just aren't ready. And that's something that can only get better, or maybe we see worsen as the season goes along. I think the Chiefs at the current moment, I don't think they're panicking. This is what, when we broke down the AFC West, when I talked about great teams and what makes them different, there's absolutely, to me, zero panic in that locker room whatsoever. And A, that shows that is the mark of a champion. And B, I think that internally they saw the mistakes. They have it on tape. They're going to go over and they're going to fix it. I think they very much can do that. Even aside from Kadarius Toney's mess ups, which we will get to here momentarily, I think what they really want is Sky Moore to take that step. Sky Moore had a bit of an up and down rookie season. Maybe he missed a few games if memory serves. And he kind of came on a little bit in the postseason with a play or two. I think the expectation is that, hey, we drafted you. I think what was he, a late first or early second round pick in last year's draft?
He was a mid second round. He was 54th.
Mid second round pick, but he was a guy that was very highly touted and was very popular going in. I think the expectation is that Sky Moore needs to start to show a little bit of something for all the mistakes that Kadarius Toney also made. Sky Moore is supposed to be one of the jewels of this team that makes up for the fact that you lost both Hill and Mecole Hardman. He's the next guy on that team that can have that blazing straight line speed. They need him to play at a higher level ultimately. But I think right now the Chiefs are going to be fine, and they're going to be focused on just fixing things internally.
So here's my question then. If just pointing to you, who's their number one wide receiver?
Rashi Rice.
Because I think they were trying to have Kadarius Toney be their number one, but you saw how well that worked out, or it didn't work out, and none of these other guys have been number ones at any point in their career.
I would assume it's going to be Scantling going forward.
That's what I think it would be too.
Until they maybe make a trade for a disgruntled wide receiver, possibly in Tampa Bay.
Or Arizona.
Well, Tampa Bay has two talented ones compared to Arizona that has Arizona.
Hollywood Brown.
But I don't think Mahomes needs more short guys to throw to. But ultimately, Justin, I could see that MVS. And MVS is probably the guy who came closest to any of these guys on the roster of having number one opportunities. Not that he was ever a number one long-term in Green Bay in any way, shape, or form, but he was at best a number two in moments. And he had a game or two. I think it was that one game against the Minnesota Vikings a couple years ago where Rodgers hit him for 2 long dimes. And I think just in the fourth quarter, I think that's what Kansas City was hoping when they signed him last season. I think that's what they're going to hope for a little bit this season to get past this early stretch, because now I think the ultimate question is, how many more games is Travis Kelce going to miss? I think that's going to be the big X factor for what happens for the start of the season with this team, is that will Travis Kelce miss a significant amount of time here in the opening quarter of the season? If we're talking about Travis Kelce missing 2 more games, I think, again, this question intensifies more so. And it's all about, we know the people in that locker room that can handle the storm of a tough start mentally. Can these young receivers do that? I think is the big question.
And it also doesn't get any easier for them, too, because in their next 2 weeks, they're taking on some very good, young, hungry defenses. They have Jacksonville next week. And I'm not saying this because I'm a fan, but Chicago in week 3 has upped their defense considerably. So it won't be an easy game, but it could be a game that they struggle, probably.
No, they did, the Bears, for what they did for Justin Fields in the offseason, you could argue that the biggest changes they made to that team was the defense.
Yeah.
You had linebackers, you had a little bit in the secondary, you had a little bit of pass rush, not overwhelmingly, but you added a little bit at all 3 levels for the Bears defense, which, to be fair, they needed, because it was bad last year. And
if you're Justin, you're hoping that Kelsey's out past week 4, because that's when they play the Jets. So, one less weapon to worry about.
It will be interesting. I think it'll be an interesting question to see Jets as well, what the Chiefs' record is after the first 4 games of the season. We are entering territory where they could be, I think, 2-2 after the first 4 weeks of the season, which it's fair, because I think they could they can win the next 2 games without Kelce. I think the Jets game would be the first game that I would start to question now, yet again, of can they win this without Travis Kelce in the lineup. So,
and then 2 guys would be reasonably excited about that, and 1 guy in Vegas is like, why are you excited, Josh? You're going to be terrible. Why are you excited about that?
So there goes that. Again, amazing Fact or Fiction, amazing trivia, amazing everything overall by our games master himself. Justin just continues to deliver when we expect him to step up, unlike certain people, in certain games. So, guys, we've already made up plenty of references about it. I don't know how much more. Well, we'll probably do a little bit of analysis of it, but Lions and Chiefs, did it live up to the opening hype that we expected for the season, or did they drop the ball like a certain wide receiver did multiple times in that game, multiple times in the fourth quarter? Just no shots, man. I poke fun, but realistic. I am all about the mental health aspect. So please, this is all just to poke fun. And this is Sports Agents of Chaos, not Sports Agents of Nice Guys. That name got shafted real quick in the naming process.
Yeah, no, we took care of that pretty easily.
So let's get to it. Detroit Lions, Kansas City Chiefs. It was a very close, not as high-scoring game as many of us hope for on this podcast, but ultimately it was a decent game. It had a couple of moments. We learned a couple things throughout the game. We learned that the Kansas City Chiefs have a straight-line hack into Justin's phone, because the second Justin said it's finally time that the Chiefs suffer a little bit, they scored a touchdown a minute after you texted that, Justin?
Yeah,
well,
something like that.
What I said was that it's about time that they got hurt, because they've been shedding weapons for years.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
And they scored a touchdown
immediately after that. But it's not like they did much scoring all game. So,
fair.
20 points is low for the Chiefs.
Yeah, fair. Ultimately, fair statement by you. It did come true, but in the short term.
They knew. They saw. I should have kept saying it because I bet on that game.
Yeah, there you go. But
there you go.
Let's get down to it, guys. 21-20 victory for the Detroit Lions to start the season. The defending champs fall. I think, second season or third season in a row that the defending champions lose on the opening game?
At least the second, but I'll have to run back in and see what happened in the season before then. So
yeah. So while Rick does his amazing research for us, I'll throw it to Justin first. Justin, what were your thoughts? Obviously, we've already done a lot of conversations about the game. It's really been Rick and I. So let's throw it to you. What were your immediate takeaways in that first game of the season from both sides?
Detroit really did well to fix a lot of the issues they had on defense. They had a fantastic draft, what looks like a fantastic draft immediately, with young kids having immediate impacts on that team, including Sam Laporta and Branch out of Alabama, who all had very good games. And so did the linebacker, too, whose name is escaping
Jack
me.
Campbell.
Yeah, who Jerg said was a terrible pick.
And I love it. So,
Jahmyr Gibbs was surprising in that he did not play a ton, but when he was on the field, he had a big impact. It's a shame he slipped on the goal line early in that first quarter because it looked like it was about to be a foot race between him and one of the Chiefs defenders. And no offense to anyone on the Chiefs, but I'm probably taking Jahmyr Gibbs in a foot race. And as unfortunately for the Chiefs, it looks like they should maybe try and pass the ball a little bit less to Kadarius Toney because his it was like a random stat, but it was points. It was a score efficiency per target, and it was like negative 2.5 for Kadarius Toney. Every target that he had, they scored negative 2.5. It meant that every 3 passes, the other team scored a touchdown. So it was bad. Unfortunately, it looks like he was the one that cost him the game because all 3 of his drops were major points in that game. One of them would have been a huge first down and a huge chunk play to get them a little bit of momentum in the fourth quarter. One was a ball that was in his hands crossing the field, which ended up being a pick 6, which was another wild situation. And then one where he just did not look prepared to get the ball. So obviously you don't expect that to happen to him week 2. I'm sure that Andy Reid will get in his face. I'm sure he's, you got to have some sort of work ethic to be in the NFL at this point. So I'm sure he'll try and turn that around in week 2. But it was surprising. And I know that people are trying to say that it was an asterisk win because they were missing 2 of their best players. It's a major win for the Lions. I don't care who you're missing. There's guys that are missing every week in the NFL on every team. And it doesn't matter how good or how bad or how vital those players are. Listen, ask the Minnesota Vikings last year the difference between losing to Cooper Rush or not. They'll tell you it doesn't matter. A win is a win. And Detroit got a huge first win.
Yeah, I'm with you on that ultimately, Justin. I think a lot of people trying to make excuses. At the end of the day, the win is a win for the Lions. And the fact is that they start 1-0 on the season for the team, which is big in this race for the NFC North, which they believe that they can win the North this time around. That's big for a team.
They made their case last Thursday night.
Absolutely. And especially with the way the defense played, because even with the improvements they made, the biggest question was still the defense coming into this season. And that when you really started to break down the roster, we said it, and this is going to be I still think this is going to be the credence for the Lions defense this season. The whole needs to play better than the sum of its parts. There are some good individuals on that defense, but when you really started to break it down, the Lions defense lacked a little bit in certain areas compared to, again, still the upper echelon teams that they want to compete against. This was an upper echelon team, and their defense held them to 20 points. I don't care if Travis Kelce wasn't there. You held Patrick Mahomes to 20 points. You very much deserve the win right there. So it was an amazing victory for the Detroit Lions. Like you said, I think the story of the Lions this season could also end up potentially being a different player every single week is going to end up stepping up for this team. And I think that's going to be absolutely phenomenal. Like you said, the young guys performing pretty early here. Campbell making me look bad in week 1, but I still got 17 more weeks, buddy. But Gibbs, I think, was absolutely phenomenal. He had 42 yards on 7 carries. If they get this kid 15 carries in a game, what he could do offensively will be certainly interesting to say the very least. But David Montgomery, who a lot of people, Jamal Williams left, they question why'd you give it to Montgomery? Why not Williams? David Montgomery did a pretty good job in this first game of the season, justifying for a moment why it was smart to actually give a running back a little bit of money. Who would have thought you'd do that in the league nowadays? But ultimately for the Lions, I think that this first game showed that a lot of the decisions they made in the offseason were good decisions right now. Now, obviously, it is just a game. It is just a week. We need to see how it continues. But obviously, for a team like Detroit, it's bigger to start with a win ultimately. I think we can all agree there's probably a team or two in this league right now that if they start with a loss in week 1, we can already say their season's over. The Lions would not have been in that category, but for them to start with a win like this in a season that I think they know what the expectation is. And also, let's not forget, Detroit is missing Jameson Williams for the first 6 games of the season through no fault of their own. Him not being able to keep his phone closed for like another 5 to 10 minutes. But they're missing Jameson Williams for the first 6 weeks of the season. If they can get off to 500 start while missing what could potentially be the key to their offense taking it to that next level, that's a really big thing for Detroit. So I'm with you, Justin. By hook or by crook, it doesn't matter sometimes. The win is the win. And the Detroit Lions very much got the win in this one.
Let me also just say before we move on from that too, the Lions defense, if you compare what happened last year week 1 to this year week 1, allowing 316 yards of offense to one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen play. Although last year, one of the other best quarterbacks we've ever seen play, Geno Smith, torched them for 555 yards. That is a minus 200-yard improvement for the defense. So Aaron Glenn deserves a lot of credit here, man. They had a good game plan, and sure, was Kelsey not in the lineup? Sure, but nothing else worked for Kansas City, so Detroit was able to do the right thing. Worked out pretty nicely.
Exactly. And all that matters sometimes is just doing the right thing at the end of the day.
Yep.
If we're gonna do shout outs too, I want to shout out the Kansas City defense too, because that was a high powered offense last year. I think they improved this year in Detroit. And they were missing their best player. They are a young, up and coming defense. They may not put it together fully this year, but if they add another piece or two to that defense, they might have rebuilt something in Kansas City, because that was an issue last year, especially in the secondary, and they looked pretty good yesterday.
I love Trent McDuffie, man. The way that he played on the corner, he was a very, very good corner for them in that game. He was very good.
He is continuing to just develop in spades for them, because he's the one that made that big pass deflection against I think it was either Chase or Higgins in the AFC Championship game that it would have been a not just easy first down, like it would have brought the Bengals right to the red zone or like close to it. Maybe I'm forgetting the field positioning aspect of it, but the Bengals were marching down the field and Trent McDuffie made a big play to stop that from happening.
Mm-hmm.
The kid took on a big role last season and he continues to do so. Justin is right. Like they're a piece or two away from that defense taking itself to the next level. It's almost like they need, like, I don't know, a Chris Jones or something like that. If only they could have that. I don't know. There's some guy.
Some guy.
Yeah.
Ted Adams.
But yeah, I think that just about does it for Lions Chiefs. Did it live up to the high scoring hype? Not necessarily, but I still think it was a solid first game ultimately to come back. I mean, I'll say this, better than last season. last season was a tough one. Last season was a tough one.
The only good thing about last year was the Rocks opening to the season. That was the only good thing about the season opening game that year.
Yeah. Yeah. So, moving on from just Lions and Chiefs talk, let's go a little bit to week 1 as a whole. And we're going to kind of do this. We're going to change the wheel of sorts. Not the wheel of chaos. The wheel of chaos stays, ladies and gentlemen. Don't worry. But we're going to reinvent the wheel very slightly here this season, where we are, as the weeks go, in terms of reviewing, previewing, and what we're going to be doing, although kind of the preview aspect is going to be more so our picks. But the reviewing that we do of games, it's going to be done a little bit differently this season. Throughout the season, Rick, Justin, and I are going to be looking through what was the previous week of games, and we're just kind of be going at little nitpicks, two things here, 2 things there that we're going to be taking from various games of what we think stands out to us most in the NFL as the season is developing. So unfortunately, the Arizona Cardinals are probably not going to be featured on this way too many times. Yeah. Which, to be fair, I don't think anyone's missing that.
You wouldn't if we were Arizona, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to lose any audience in the state of Arizona even by outwardly saying that.
Oh, good. Arizona's now on our list. Great.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think that Arizona is probably going to be the least offended because it's like, yeah, no, we probably shouldn't be mentioned.
Well, I'll be sure to offend them. The Grand Canyon's a big hole in the desert. Nice try, guys.
God dang it, Rick. Anyways, as we go from that, so we're going to be going through, as I said, as the season continues, week by week, and picking, what are some interesting things to happen. So as we go into week 1, boys, what are some interesting things that could be happening in week 1 that you guys are going to personally be keeping an eye on? I'll go first, honestly. This game is going to be a fun one for me because I picked this team in the preseason to have a pretty good year. Justin did as well. To me, an interesting game, I think, will be week 1, Panthers-Falcons. What will Bryce Young look like right off the gate? Because a big reason why myself and Justin have them as, sneaky favorites and winners of the NFC South is the belief is that Bryce Young will play up to that first overall pick this season. And what is it going to look like week 1? Obviously, to me, there's only so much you could take from the preseason and what he was able to do and wasn't able to do. But I think the consistency of the reps he's been getting in practice, the fact that, again, Frank Reich is the head coach there now, and I think it's going to be great. And again, that Carolina Panthers defense, man, I have a lot of belief in Evero and what he could do for them, because he was the guy that was leading that Broncos defense for the last couple of seasons, that if only they had a good quarterback the last 2 years, they probably could have done something more than, just be a middling team. I think him being there with some of the young pieces on that defense, I think what Bryce Young can do electricity-wise, energy-wise to the team, I think there's a lot of reasons to believe in the Carolina Panthers, and I think week 1 will be a test, because the Atlanta Falcons, to me, are the epitome of they're going to go one way or the other. They're either going to win the NFC South, or they're going to be a top 3 pick. And if you're an Atlanta Falcons fan, honestly, you're probably going to want one or the other as well. So we'll see what happens there as Arthur Smith tries to rebuild that offense. So that's one of the games, one of the storylines that's personally going to be something I'm looking at this week, is Bryce Young right off the gate in the NFL. How does he do? So that's it for me. Either of you could go next if you have something that you are personally looking towards. Or if you need a little bit more time, I can quickly go over something.
I got one. I am looking at that Miami and Chargers game. That's a game to me that screams maybe future playoffs. It's 2 young and up and coming quarterbacks that have a lot of question marks now. I mean, obviously, people want to sit here and say Herbert is the cream of the crop in the league, and that's all well and good statistically. Regular season, he's been great. What do you do against good teams? What do you do in the playoffs? And this is going to be a major, major game for week 1 that might have serious playoff implications. I mean, a head-to-head matchup between these 2 teams that might be vying for a wild card spot. This is going to be a huge game. And not to mention, I'm excited to see some of the rookies on that team. Devon Chain, hopefully he is getting some playing time this week. I'm so excited to see Quentin Johnston play for the San Diego Superchargers. No, the Los Angeles Superchargers. Hey. And yeah, that's a game that I'm very excited to watch.
And also the debut as offensive coordinator properly for the Chargers' new OC, Kellen Moore. So it's going to be interesting, to say the least. How much better is he? How much better is he than Lombardi? Probably a lot.
Probably.
It's not a high bar to clear. So
probably. Yeah.
There's that. Rick, what is one thing you're looking forward to in this week 1?
So I'm going to cheat a little bit.
As you always do.
As I do. What I'm looking forward to, honestly, this week is that there are 8 interdivisional games this week to start off week 1. 1 game per division. And so it'll be interesting to see how that plays into the rest of the season, because getting an early leg up on the divisional standings can really be a head start for you if you get close towards the end and you have that tiebreaker over these other teams. So I'm curious to see, in these 8 games, will the winners keep the momentum going towards week 18? If they can stay as like the divisional winners from week 1 to week 18, that'll really be interesting to me, because there are teams here that are fighting for the divisional standings that you won't really expect. Like, I'm looking at that Cleveland-Cincinnati game, for example. And if the Browns can somehow pull off an upset on the Bengals in week 1 and make that early statement, they could be a team that's dangerous. I know a lot of people have them trending pretty high up in their odds-making picks. So they could be really interesting there too. I think another one is Vegas-Denver. Because again, is Denver the real deal now with Sean Payton? And again, if they start off 1-0 in division, with Kansas City already being so far behind that they're the number 1 overall pick in the 24 NFL draft right now, as we say it, why not? So I think those 8 games that are there, it'll be interesting to see how early season scheduling and division really plays a factor towards the end of the year for how those teams do. And also the teams that lose. If you're Buffalo, let's say, and you start off 0-1 in division, that's rough. That's a rough start for a team that has, I think, high expectations and very little wiggle room. Like they're reaching the end of their quota, I think Buffalo is. So if they start off 0-1 in division, heads are going to roll up in Western New York, man.
Yeah. And again, that's something I've kind of been hinting at and this will probably be a topic that we broach as we get to the, not even halfway point of the season, I think as we get towards the end of the season, but teams and what their offseason futures could look like. And I know it's funny to already talk about offseason when we've just started the season, but this is a realistic thing that not every single team is going to have a long championship window. You know, the Patriots are very much an asterisk in that. They are not a trend. They are a blip. Not every team has a 20-year window of winning a championship. It's just not a thing. And how long is the Bills' current window? And will they be able to get back to this level when this window is over? Because you have a Josh Allen who, as great as he is continuing to get up there in age, is continuing to be so physical in his running style. Will that catch up to him physically? Will he start to break down a little bit, a la what happened to Cam Newton in Carolina? Like that's a realistic thing. Like when people talk about comps, the biggest comp for a lot of people to Josh Allen is actually Cam Newton. And it's about that, because you're talking about arguably the most physical player in the league. And what is that going to do to his body? Because I'm like, Cam Newton said it. And I think now hindsight 2020, seeing his career, he took a lot of hits early on for that Carolina Panthers team. And I think it very much did cost him in his later years when he still could have been decent, but ultimately is no longer in the league. I'm not going to make that kind of bold prediction for Allen, but for the Bills as a whole, and a team that I've already had my questions about, this will be a big start to the season against this Jets team that, for all intents and purposes, could go either way. The Jets are either going to start off hot or they're going to start off slow.
I'm wondering if Justin ever went back in and listened to my Super Bowl prediction and the story of how Zach Wilson was going to come off the bench and lead the Jets to victory over the Lions. I mean, listen, you'll take a Super Bowl win. You'll be 2-0 in franchise history with a Super Bowl win. So,
like we just said, a win is a win. I don't care if there's an asterisk next to it. If the Jets win the Super Bowl this year, I'm taking all of the credit. I'm taking all of the joy. A win is a win, is a win, is a win, is a win.
Justin will be the grand marshal of that ticker tape parade in the city. Yeah. Love it.
So my next thing that I'm going to be interested to look out for, and yes, while the team that they are facing is not necessarily the highest quality team, the Baltimore Ravens' new look offense and an early audition into what Todd Monken can make the offense, I think is going to be something that I want to watch. Now, again, it's the Houston Texans. This ain't the gangbusters, to say the very least. But this is a early rendition of what we could be seeing the Ravens start to do more. And is there finally more of a balance in the offense between passing and running, and especially a balance for Lamar Jackson being able to start to throw the ball a little bit more and not just have to solely rely on his legs? Now, that being said, you don't just take away his athleticism. He's still very athletic. He's still very fast. Somehow, throughout his career, despite being on the field against some of the fastest men on earth, Lamar Jackson is faster than all of them. How amazing that is. And now Justin Fields starting to show a little bit of that for himself on Chicago. I think if you are Baltimore, this is a big first game, not just obviously because you want to start with a win, but because you want to see, tidbits, little crumbs of what this offense could look like as you start to gear up more towards your division, which, as we talked about, I think the AFC North could be a sneaky, very tough division this year. Even with whoever we might perceive as the fourth seed in this division, the fourth seed in this division might be a 500 team. And we don't really get to say that about divisions that often. Now, will we be wrong in that assessment? Probably. But at least on paper, to start the season off, we're talking about the AFC North as having 4 teams potentially that could finish around 500 or better. That's really good. And you need to get off to a good start. You need your offense to get off to a good start in a division that has been, notorious for having defenses. Not the same. This ain't your dad's. This ain't your older brother's AFC North necessarily in terms of the defense, but it's still pretty good division overall. So I think the Baltimore Ravens and the style of offense that they start to show us in Week 1 is going to be something I believe people should look out for, because if Lamar Jackson can really put it together, more of his arm. I mean, I already said it last week. I think we could be seeing a renaissance of Lamar's career and maybe another MVP added to the trophy case. So there's that.
Yeah.
Who's next?
I got one that I just thought of. I didn't pick this game as an upset, but do not be surprised if Tampa Bay goes into Minnesota and beats the Vikings this week. Mike Evans against that Minnesota secondary is a pretty decent matchup, because there's the thing. These two teams have expectations to disprove in different ways. The Vikings have to prove that they're not frauds, and the Bucs have to prove that they can actually win a game with Baker Mayfield. I think Tampa Bay's defense is pretty solid going up against Justin Jefferson, but as we've mentioned, the Vikings defense last year was so full of holes. They were like Swiss cheese. And what have they really done to change that this year? They haven't really done a whole lot, I don't think. So
they lost more pieces.
Exactly. So there's a chance if Baker Mayfield sticks to a good game plan and finds Mike Evans, I'll tell you what. If that's what happens, Mike Evans will be the one leading the receiving yards after Week 1, not Justin Jefferson, because I think he will torch the Vikings for over 200. And I think that might lead the Bucs. I didn't pick them, but it might be. I'm looking at the game now, I'm looking at that line, and I'm saying something about that strikes me as an odd Week 1 opening upset that nobody sees coming. So maybe.
Which there has to be at least one. Like there's always
pick one, pick it.
I got other upsets in the chamber. Don't you worry.
Justin, he has a tie on his first pick of the season. Come on now. So
That's like week 12, man. Relax. Come on, man.
But no, I definitely see the logic there, Rick. Like there is always that one upset that happens in week 1 where we just do not see coming. Again, Pittsburgh Steelers a couple seasons ago when they beat the Bills in week 1, like nobody picked the Steelers to win that game.
Yeah.
So to say the very least, there is that. Justin, what is your next story that you're looking at? I have one more personally, but I'll wait till Justin goes for this one.
I'd like to see Derrick Henry come back and establish dominance. I mean, he's never been the guy that comes out week 1 and wrecks. He usually has like a decent game and, et cetera, et cetera. I want to see him come out and prove that he's not the beat up old man he was at the end of last season. Come out strong. Let's see you, make some big carries against a tough Saints front seven.
Nice. For myself personally, my last story I'm going to be looking at, it is the begin of the collapse for Caleb as the Arizona Cardinals are going to be vying for the first overall pick in this next draft. And oh, how it's going to begin. And who are they facing for this first initial? Isn't it funny? The collapse for Caleb, Cardinals, Commanders. That's just phenomenal storytelling right there. And alliteration. Thank you, NFL. Thank you a lot. Yeah, I like just to see how bad the Cardinals are going to look. Like maybe they're that week 1 team that surprised us. Because funny thing is, like as of now, via the lines that we are seeing currently brought to us by our friends at
Caesar Sportsbook.
Thank you, Justin. The Commanders are presently up, are favored to win by at least a touchdown in this one. They are a -7 favorite. And how many games were the Commanders favored by -7 last season?
Ooh,
Probably not a lot.
Yeah, not a lot.
So it really just goes to show how the Cardinals are bleeding talent. They are bleeding, health, and they're bleeding a head coach that knows how to motivate people. Because that man could not motivate me to finally eat a sandwich after going on a fast for 2 weeks. You've seen that video. It's not something great to say the very least. Not as Rick would say. Well, as Rick always quotes, not great, Bob.
Not great, Bob.
Ultimately,
not great, John.
The Cardinals are going to be rough this season. I am very much seeing this as kind of like a repeat of that season before they got Kyler, where Josh Rosen was the sitting duck. Now, in this case, Kyler Murray's hurt, so he's not necessarily going to – well, he's sort of like a lame duck quarterback, potentially. But it's Josh Dobbs taking that mantle this time around. Or will it be Josh Dobbs? Who knows? Because we don't know who the week 1 starter is, apparently, because, we got to surprise the people.
It's Clayton Tune, obviously.
Of course. So, yeah, the collapse for Caleb Williams is going to be highly entertaining to watch this season. The Cardinals are leading that race at this moment. And with the Houston Texans first-round pick as well, they have a lot that they could do in terms of remodeling that franchise. And I think this is the first step into that.
But remember what Caleb Williams' dad said this week. If Arizona's number 1, he may want to go back to school.
Which would be the funniest thing in the world.
That'd be hilarious. It would be great. My last thing, I'm looking at that Philadelphia-New England game. A lot of things going on in that game. Tom Brady's coming back. They're going to honor his legacy. And I think a season-long, Mickey Mouse style, like, welcome to Disney World fireworks and stuff like that. The Eagles are only favored by 4 in this game, which I think is a testament to Bill Belichick's defense. Even though their pieces aren't really there for the Patriots, they still have that capability to really cook up interesting schemes. And we'll see if the Eagles try and go maybe too overhyped, because I think this is a bit of a revenge game also, because if we think about it, the Eagles had that chance back in the early 2000s to win that Super Bowl with Donovan McNabb and Terrell Owens. And who was there to stop them? Tom Brady. So why not just stick it in his craw a little bit more that, you cost us that early Super Bowl we should have won back in the early 2000s, and here's a 52-17 win over your home team. It's not going to be that high, but that could be a case where the Eagles might go a little too hard, and this game will be a little closer than people think.
I love how it's always Rick assuming that the game that happened when a majority of the Eagles roster is in elementary or middle school, it's going to motivate the team to want to.
Trust me. You think John Gannon can motivate anybody? I'm sure Sirianni has it circled. Like, remember this? You don't? Well, I'll tell you all about it.
Look, Nick Sirianni is a dog. I'm not going to deny the man that. But at the end of the day, this ain't T.O. and Brian Dawkins and Trent Cole and guys like that on this roster, Rick. Like
they'll be there for when New England goes back to Philadelphia in a few years for like their own little legacy ceremony.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, Justin, do we have one last storyline to go over, or are we moving on?
We can move on.
All right, there we go. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've been waiting for it. You've been waiting for it. We know it. You know it. We love it. You love it. It is the return, finally, of the hashtag SAOC Pick Challenge. It was fun to do last season for the inaugural year, and it is back. And kind of the same, honestly, considering the rules, but we'll just say better than ever for the tagline. But ladies and gentlemen, yes, it is the return of the SAOC Pick Challenge, where we are now going to determine the Season 2 winner of it. And the winner will have bragging rights into the off-season. How much will they brag? Will they brag like how I brag, which is honestly not as often as I probably did? Or will they brag more than I did, which considering, the other two people who are with me, probably will be the case. But let's get to the rules in itself, ladies and gentlemen. The picks are made in a serpent draft order, which as the season will go on, will be based on the cumulative point totals that we have accrued throughout this season. So let's say hypothetically after this first week, I have the least amount of points between the three of us. I get the first pick in next week's rendition of the pick challenge. And that continues to go on as we go there. Games cannot be chosen twice once a game is initially picked. So if Rick, let's say, picks whoever in Bengals Browns, it is obviously off the table for myself, Justin, and Billy Shakes to have on it as well. You get 4 picks to make that are all given a point monarchy: 4 points, 3 points, 2 points, 1 point. You can pick a tie. It must be used with your first pick, which will be elevated to a 5-point pick. But again, can only be used with that first pick. And we all must pick at least one upset game in our crew of picks, and it can be no lower than the 2-point game. So no cheating with the 1-pointer, ladies and gentlemen, just like last season. We are fair, proper gentlemen in this show. Well, chaos and all that, but we are gentlemen. We have rules and standards on this show, ladies and gentlemen. We are controlled chaos, unlike, other people and their picks and predictions and all that jazz. So, that being said, I think I've gone over every single rule. Let's get to it. Of course, as everyone knows, as Sienna barks in the background, this first order, just like it was last season, was based off of the predictions for the first week of the season. Now, yet again, we all got the first game wrong in terms of team winning. Good Lord, guys. I think we need to step it up next season in terms of the very first pick.
We did a bad job.
We are a cumulative 0-6 in the first 2 games of the last 2 seasons. Not great. Not great.
It's one game.
So as we wait for another calendar year to go by before we get our chance to redeem that, let's focus on this so far. The person with the first pick in the first week of the 2023 SAOC Pick Challenge is Billy Shakes. No, yeah. It is the Podfather who gets the first pick this time. And of course, Rick has it written down. So Rick, before you go, of course, please let the people know of what the draft order is for this first week fully.
Absolutely. So the draft order for this week was based upon the fact that while none of us won, there were 3 separate margins of victory that were attained. So since I had the margin of victory exactly on the nose at 1 point, I am picking first. Justin's pick was, I believe, a 4 to 7 point pick. Therefore, he picked second. And Jurg, since you called for a blowout and lost, you have the third pick, which means that it will be myself, Justin, and then Jurg will go twice and then back around again. And Billy the Pirate will pick last of the 3 remaining games that we have here. So I will just start. And can we all resolve, gentlemen? I know that we had tough last 2 years for picking the first games. Can we all resolve to do better than we did last year in week 1 when Justin had 1 point and Jurg, myself, and someone here named Sandoval, who I don't know who that is anymore, had 4 points? Can we all resolve to do better than 4 points this year? Get us really started on a high note. And with that in mind, I'm going to take the easiest game to pick. It's the one that has the largest point spread, and it will be the Baltimore Ravens over the Houston Texans. I think Lamar Jackson hits the ground running. Houston struggles a bit with this brand new look with DeMeco Ryans and with CJ Stroud as their new quarterback, and I think it will show. So I think Baltimore will get the easy win here. And just because I said that, don't be surprised if they do not. Although I will say that last year, some of us did pick Baltimore as a 4-point pick and got the win. That was Jurg. So Jurg started off with a 4-point Baltimore win and won the championship. So I'm doing the same thing here, clearly.
So Rick is hoping for the repeat odds of who picked Baltimore first last season ended up winning the whole thing.
Yep.
That's really what it's all about. It's whoever picks the first team wins.
Of course. There you
go. Excuse me. All right. So there's a couple games that I have my eye on currently, but I think that I'm going to have to go with what I think is going to be the most sure thing. And I think that, to me, is going to have to be the Eagles over the Patriots. just because the Eagles are supposed to be the best team in the NFC, and the Patriots are supposed to be one of the lower teams in the AFC. And wouldn't it just be fantastic if I just ruined my week with a Patriots win and a loss in the pick challenge? So I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go with the Eagles over the Patriots.
Reasonable.
There it is. All right, my turn with back-to-back selections that I have here on the clock. Because again, serpent draft order, ladies and gentlemen, or as John Gruden would say, serpentine. Well, I mean, for this first one, I got a couple options here. And with this first pick, I mean, come on now. Come on. He's on the board. Give me the future. No. Although it is tempting. Give me the future Ring of Honor quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks. And give me Geno Smith and them Dirty Birds, even though it's more the Falcons, but the Dirty Birds of Seattle beating the Los Angeles Rams in Week 1. So there's my first pick. My second pick. There's two games here that I'm very much, going through my second pick because there's some fun ones here to say the very least. Do I go with the obvious one or do I go with the fun that's a little bit closer? The one that's a little bit closer or that's just a bit more fun? A bit more fun or closer? A bit more fun or closer? Yeah, whatever. Give me this better work out for all the praise I gave to them last offseason. Better come back, to give me credit this time. Give me the Commanders over the Cardinals for my next one. Yeah, it's not looking great in Arizona. It's only 7 points, which we could argue it might be the lowest spread this entire season for some of these Cardinals games. Because there are going to be some wide open ones as the season continues. I was considering using my upset pick here, but that Commanders-Cardinals one is just too salivating to not take. So give me that one.
Yeah, I was torn on whether or not I was going to take that one. I'm going to go here with the next up-and-coming team versus a team that has had some offseason woes, and that's going to be Jacksonville over Indianapolis. I think that a rookie quarterback starting against a decent pass rush, no Jonathan Taylor. It screams to me an easy win. Hopefully they don't get blown out. The Colts do have an excellent defense, and it is a home game, but Jacksonville by 4.5, I think is conservative, and we're not even taking the spreads. So I'm going to take Jacksonville.
Also, didn't Zach Moss get injured, if I'm not mistaken?
Maybe.
Naheem Hines, I think, got hurt for Buffalo because he rode a jet ski.
Right. True, but I could have sworn maybe it was a different Colts. Like one of the Colts' remaining running backs also got hurt, so it's like that backfield is even thinner than you think.
That's true.
One of the rough things for a rookie quarterback is you don't have running support for him. If there's only really one good running back available for the Colts, it could be a tough start for Anthony Richardson.
It could be, yeah, very much could be. So, by this logic, gentlemen, the both of you are locked in at 2 points for an upset special here. Right. So that is the way that this works. So it's my pick now at 3 and at 2. I already have my 2-point pick, and I'm not picking an upset, so I'm going an upset here at 3 because, as you know, I like to live a little bit on the dangerous side of life here. The thing is, I'm looking at my upset specials here, and there's one that I'm tempted to take that may come back to haunt me, but as they always do. But he had one of the best preseasons I think you could have asked for, given the way he was picked, given the team that he's on. And if you look at the other side of that coin in his position, are we really sure that his counterpart is back fully?
I knew he was going to go with this team. I knew this was going to be the pick.
At 3 points, I will pick the upset of the Pittsburgh Steelers over the San Francisco 49ers. It's only a 2-point game. It's a tough one, and it is at Pittsburgh. So the Niners have to travel to Western PA in the craziness of Acrisure Stadium. Damn it. But still, give me the Steelers. They had a really good offseason. They had a very good preseason training camp. I think it wouldn't be surprising if San Francisco starts off with a loss here. It really wouldn't. So I will take them. And then my 2-point selection here, I mean, come on. Who would I be to not do this? Chicago Bears over the Green Bay Packers. I believe in Justin Fields. I believe in this Bears defense, and I don't believe in Jordan Love. So I think the Bears will have a nice, easy opening win over the team that was their big brother for many, many years, but not anymore. The big brother's being disowned. And now now the NFC North will have a lot of activities because the Step Brothers are building bunk beds. The Bears and the Lions are coming to crash. Give me Chicago at 2 points.
Believe in Chicago, but not enough to make your 3-point pick.
right.
Well, I like a flashy 3-point upset pick, so I do that instead.
That is true.
That's what I did last year, and I won with Minnesota. So
I will say this: I was considering the Steelers over the Niners for my 3-point upset pick. But again, like for me, the Commanders one was just too too there for me to take.
As I said, let's all just do better than we did last year in Week 1.
Yeah. Not a high bar.
No, very low bar for some people on this podcast. Speaking of which, Justin, it's your pick next.
I'm pretty tempted to make a very surprising upset pick. The spread is not high, but the Browns at home are really calling out my name right now. I'm not sure that that's what I want to do, but the Bengals have a very long history of starting out slow. Deshaun Watson has a full offseason now with the team. It's between that and my my favorite in the NFC South right now, because that would also be an upset. I'll tell you what, Jerk. Why don't you make my 2-point pick? I'm feeling cocky. I gave you the Carolina Panthers or the Cleveland Browns.
Let me rewind here for a second. Do you remember the last time you felt cocky in a pick challenge? You picked a tie in Week 18.
No, but this time I'm putting it on someone else to be cocky. So,
well, but do you think he's going to be nice to you?
It's Week 1. I gave him 2 picks. He can make a pick.
Well, here's the funny thing: is that whichever game Justin wasn't going to pick here, I was going to pick.
There you go. Okay. I'm giving you the option.
So we're making the picks for one another here, basically. Do we have full word on Joe Burrow and if he's playing? He's playing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but Myles Garrett and Dalvin Tomlinson will be coming after him all game long.
Exactly what I'm thinking, man. Yeah. Exactly what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure I'm not missing any other decent upset picks before, but I don't think I am, honestly.
So the upsets would be Tampa over Minnesota, which Tennessee over New Orleans, which I don't think you're going to take anyways. The Dolphins over the Chargers, the Raiders over the Broncos, the Giants over the Cowboys, and the Jets over Buffalo.
And for those of you who are watching and don't know, I have a personal rule that I do not bet on the Jets. That's why I can't jinx them and do all that stuff. So that's why they're not being taken with my upset pick.
Sure. And apparently, I have the power here. All right,
what am I doing, man?
What am I? Man, I can barely answer that question for myself on a daily basis. Now you want me to answer?
I know. Get in your head.
Oh boy.
Come on, champ.
I will give you. Again, I was gonna go either way with these. See, here's the thing. I'm confident in both these upsets, and they could shut it, Podfather. All right.
I've been watching the league a lot, and whenever they have Ruxin set someone else's lineup, he always loses.
Yes.
That fully explains what Justin's doing here.
Love it.
All right. I will give Justin the upset pick of the Panthers over the Falcons.
Nice. That's a good pick. I'm happy with it.
And I will take the Browns over the Bengals for the upset pick. Because again, part of this for myself is I do another podcast and I try to stay true on both I'm not trying to look like I'm playing both sides. And I try to keep it consistent. And I mean, either way, it would have been consistent for me. Because I did also pick Browns over Bengals on my other pod as well. So.
Well, then by that logic, too, from the graphic that we saw, the Titans over the Saints was your other pick on the other pod. So that's your 1-point pick then, right? Titans over Saints?
You don't decide anything for me here, buddy.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
All right. With my 1-point pick, now I could pick those scoundrels from Tennessee to beat the Saints.
But why would you?
But I also think the few times I picked the Titans last season, it always came back to bite me. So, do I go with that? Or do I go with a game that is kind of 50-50 realistically, but will ultimately decide who will win last place in the AFC West between the Raiders and the Broncos? That's another one that I'm considering. Or I just go with the other game here that I think is kind of obvious that I should probably go with, and that's the 1 point pick for me: the Cowboys over the Giants.
Ooh, okay.
So
takes
That's
that
your
off the
official
board.
pick, Cowboys over the Giants.
Yeah. Again, the 1 point pick doesn't necessarily mean I'm the least confident in like the final outcome, but weighing it compared to the other decisions I've made. I think Cowboys over Giants. The spread is -3.5. I maybe could argue it should be like, I know this is like point spreading, but like 4.5 or 5. But I think the Cowboys are probably going to win week 1, barring a catastrophe happening to them. Again, did the Giants, to me, ultimately, despite the fact that I did pick the Giants as my final wildcard team, I don't have, like, when I look at the Giants roster from last season compared to this year, are there slight improvements to the team that were made? Yes. But how overwhelming is it? I don't know if it's overwhelming enough to close the gap in some of these games. Now, it is a week 1 game. It could go either way. And again, maybe this is that, crazy upset week 1 pick that we've been talking about that could happen. But I'm not seeing it in this one. So give me Cowboys over Giants.
All right, Justin, you're on your 1 point pick.
I'm not making this one for you, Chief, so you decide.
What? All right, I'll take Jerg. I'll take the pick as if Jerg was making it, and I'm going to pick the Minnesota Vikings. I don't think that I'm not a big believer in Baker Mayfield. He does step up every now and then. I don't think it's going to happen this week.
I will say this. If the Vikings lose this game, next week's going to be a fun show.
Ooh, and a little bit of breaking news. The Commanders have just downgraded Chase Young to out for Sunday's game.
Yeah.
I mean,
So instead of winning by 10, they'll win by 7. Okay.
sad. It's sad, but fair. 1 second here. I'm almost done with. I have a wheel of chaos going for, because I want to do a wheel of chaos on my personal for Billy over here. So I'm filling up with the games that I'm not going to pick. I'm going to pull a 1 point upset here, and it's a game that we talked about briefly. That the more I think about it, the more I think could be a high-scoring game and has the potential for a surprising result. Now, the thing is about this game that they have to go to the other coast to get this win. But I believe they will. I'm going to take the Dolphins over the Chargers.
Ooh.
At 1 point. I think it's a very enticing game. And
I was thinking about it.
yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, the 1 pointers are really throwaways, to be honest with you. I mean, that could get a little wild and crazy at times. So why not? Why not have a little bit of fun with that, just to kind of see what happens there. So
hey, championships can be won with the 1 point games.
They can be, but most of the time probably not. So that's neither here nor there. So that will be it for us. And I am just in the process of finishing up the picks for Billy Shakes, the Pirate, who does not get a full 4 points, 4 games this week. He only gets 3 because obviously we had the Thursday night game going on here. And let me tell you something. This is interesting. So Billy is going to take a 3 point upset pick, like myself, and that would be the Titans over the Saints, because he believes that Jerg is full of it. So that's why he's going to pick the Titans, just to make him terrible. And then at 2 points, it will be Denver over Las Vegas, believing in Sean Payton and not believing in the team that he looks like, his own namesake, because even he's embarrassed by Josh McDaniels, which, to be fair, I think is accurate. And his 1 point pick, he's going to try and curb favor with Justin by picking the Bills over the Jets, so that when it doesn't happen, Justin will be happy. So, to recap our week 1 standings in the Book of Job here. I picked Baltimore over Houston at 4 points, Pittsburgh over San Francisco in an upset at 3 points, Chicago over Green Bay at 2, and Miami over the Chargers at 1 point for my second upset. Incidentally, I also picked 2 upsets last year at week 1, so yay me. Justin is going Philadelphia over the Patriots at 4 points, Jacksonville over Indianapolis at 3, his upset pick of Carolina over Atlanta at 2 points, and Minnesota over Tampa Bay at 1 point. Jurg has Seattle and Geno Smith over the Rams at 4 points. Washington and Sam Howell over Arizona at 3 points. For some reason, Cleveland and Deshaun Watson, yay, over Cincinnati at 2 points, his upset pick. And for an even more strange reason, Trey Lance and Dallas at 1 point over the Giants.
Dak is starting. So.
I know. I just had a little fun there. And the Pirate has this upset pick at 3 with Tennessee over New Orleans, Denver over Las Vegas at 2, and Buffalo over the Jets at 1 point. There we go. And we are officially locked in for tomorrow and Monday, boys.
Not just tomorrow and Monday. We are locked in for the rest of the season. The Sports Agents of Chaos Pick Challenge, hashtag SAOC Pick Challenge, is here, and it's going to be a fun time. I cannot wait. I will say this. When it came to the Chargers-Dolphins game, I was considering that one, but I do think it's like, as much as I do firmly believe in the Chargers a bit more than the Dolphins, I think like that for it to happen in week 1 is a very close call. If this was like a week 5 or 6 game between the two of them, I'd be more confident picking the Chargers.
Well, the only thing for me about it was that I remember last year when Miami and Baltimore had that classic game in week 2.
Yeah.
So Miami, everyone's healthy in week 1 for the most part for Miami. So they can be a better team. Now, longevity-wise, I don't know how Mike McDaniel's team is going to do, but at least in weeks 1 and 2, they can still be pretty explosive. So, I mean, honestly, it gives them a good run because you're going to see some good matchups there. If you see Tyreek Hill go up against Derwin James and J.C. Jackson,
yeah,
and then I think Justin Herbert, if he has time, because the Dolphins' defense has been rebuilt now that they have Vic Fangio down there as their D coordinator. So maybe Bradley Chubb maybe go for a few split schemes here and there, and we'll see what happens. Should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that'll probably be the X factor in that game. Will the Chargers secondary stay healthy for the game? Because part of the thing that we forget in that Baltimore and Miami game is that basically the entire Ravens secondary starters went out in the fourth quarter due to like nagging injuries.
Oh, I remember it because I was in Baltimore and I listened to Baltimore Talk Radio the entire way back, and they were just lamenting the fact that their secondary was hurt, and it was hilarious.
I remember it too because one, that was the week of the Big Jets versus Browns comeback where they scored 2 touchdowns to come back in the fourth quarter. But I also was going into my sister-in-law's bridal shower. I was down 20 points in my fantasy game, and I said, man, this is going to be rough. And then I looked up after service came back, and we walked out of the building, and all of a sudden I was winning. And Tua Tagovailoa in my Superflex QB spot had 60 points.
Yeah.
And I had to figure out what was going on here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That was great. That was a really fun time down at Bully Rock for me. But yeah, listen, if you have fantasy, it's very fun to kind of watch these games play out because, again, you go into a spot where you have no service, you're down 15 or 20 like Justin was, and then you're up at the very end, and, turns it all around because you go in very sour and upset, and then you come back out and you're thrilled. And everyone's
went in happy because the Jets had just.
Yes, of course.
The Jets part,
well,
yeah.
I mean, you were partially sour because
week
exactly.
It was a good week for me that year.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a nice time at the venue for the event. Ish.
Funny thing actually about fantasy here, really quick. So a friend of mine had me do his fantasy draft for him a couple days ago.
Okay.
And despite the fact that what I assume his coworkers would be doing, some of his coworkers made some questionable choices.
Oh yeah.
Some of his coworkers made some questionable choices, and I'm just like, what are we doing here? And it kind of affected me in the draft a little bit. Like I did get sniped once or twice, and I'm like, dang it. But I think I left him in a pretty good spot. My first 2 picks for him were Devontae Adams and Travis Etienne.
Solid.
Ooh.
So,
yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it was that. I'm trying to remember some of my highlights. So I got first quarterback because the quarterbacks went a little bit earlier in the draft than I was expecting them to go. So I ended up going with Justin Fields for his quarterback. For other options, who did I go with? See, I deleted the app, so it's like I completely have zero memory now of what his fantasy team looked like. I think I went Eagles for defense.
Yeah.
I went with who did I go for a kicker? That's what I'm really trying to remember right now, but everything is just escaping me. But yeah, I did my friend's fantasy draft for him this past week.
Oh, okay.
He was going to be bogged down in work, and he was just like, "Can you help me out here?" And I'm like, "Sure." I will say this: he told me I sniped one of his coworkers because one of his coworkers is like a big Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and I took Kenny Pickett for my backup quarterback and took him away from the guy.
Nice.
So that was a funny one. So overall, fantasy, despite the fact that I don't personally really do it all that much for myself anymore, it can be fun.
You know what? It used to be a lot more fun back, I think, when we were younger. But now it's just like, Yeah, it is what it is.
Me and my 4 leagues don't agree with you. I am full force into fantasy. I love it.
Well, okay, it used to be more fun when I was younger and had more time to look at all the teams during the week and do all that. But now I've got a job. Now I've got all my life happening in front of my eyes. So fantasy football is like, if it's not for money, I'm not playing it, and can't really do that. So got a college fund to worry about.
Indeed. Rick going back to school.
I mean, I'm already back at school, so it's not for me.
Well, you're getting your 5th degree.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm going to have like 25 degrees at this point by the end of everything. So.
He's gonna be Dr. Professor Podfather by the end of everything.
Dr. Professor Patrick, very nice callback.
And Rick is gonna the course he's gonna teach everyone will be WUM 101, which is Wumbo for beginners.
Yes.
For beginners.
Wumbo for beginners and bar trivia for adults.
There we go.
Mind-blowing facts and all of that.
Perfect. All right. Extending the episode artificially aside,
Well,
let's get to the main event of the program, because the pick challenge, of course, is fun, ladies and gentlemen, but it's not the main event. You all who have been here for 70 plus episodes, first of all, thank you. Why? But thank you. And second of all, y'all know what it's here for. Ranton Rick's Rostrum Podium. What country / state / small province is he going to make an enemy out of this week? We are always wondering that on a daily basis. Who is he going to take a shot at here? We don't know. He does, and he tells us. So, Rick, begin.
An old friend has re-entered the chat for my number 3 spot on the podium this week, and that is the NCAA. Because I don't know if you've seen this, but Fiona Crawley, who is currently a student at the University of North Carolina, was a wild card entry into the U.S. Open, made it through qualifying, and because she got into the first round of the U.S. Open, was guaranteed an $81,000 payout. However, the NCAA has these rules about amateurs in sports where you can only earn $10,000. So she had to forego the winnings. So let me ask you a question, NCAA. How does this make sense when you have guys like, Bijan Robinson last year was making how much money on his NIL deal? When DeColdis Crawford was making air conditioning commercials, and when less talented people like the Cavender twins and Olivia Dunn are making millions of dollars through NILs and TikToks. How is that not the same thing as someone who earned their way through hard work and diligence to make their money to get to where they were? I want to challenge Mark Emmert right now. Go play in the U.S. Open. See how hard it is. And why do these fringe sports like tennis and volleyball and polo or water polo not get the same kind of rub as a basketball or gymnastics? Why? Why are we having the rules for some people but not for others? Don't you want to celebrate accomplishments from college athletes, or just knock them down because they're not Olivia Dunn or the Cavender twins? Grow up, please. Grow up and be better, NCAA. Number 2. Now, listen, I do a lot of lecturing when it comes to the podium, but it comes from a good place. It comes from a place where I think things can be better, and I think that people can, do better things. Well, there was a lecture that I heard the other day on a certain sports talk radio station from a certain New York Jets fan about the difference between the words best and greatest. Because this lecture was about Patrick Mahomes, and is he the best quarterback we've ever seen or one of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen? And how best versus greatest are wildly different from the normal terms. Listen up, Mike Greenberg. If I wanted to hear this lecture from somebody else, I would. The fact that it's you that has to tell me about best versus greatest, you were the worst game show host that I ever saw, because Duel was not fun. Justin could host Duel a lot better than you ever did. And here's the funny thing too. Go on X. Go on Twitter, X, whatever it is. And they showed the ESPN national lineup or the local lineup. And Greeny has a 10 to 12 spot. You know he's never going to be there. So how can you be the best or greatest at anything when you're never there for anything that you do? Greeny. Come on. We can all do your job better than you can. And now, number 1. I have a problem here, gentlemen. The problem is with a sport that I'm not really a big fan of. And the problem is with a sport that I think, is really just irritating me. And it brings me back to Noah Lyles, the track and field athlete. Because remember what he said about if you win the NBA Finals, you're called the NBA World Champion. and he made fun of that because how are you the champion of the world when you're champion of an American league? And all the USA national basketball athletes came out and were clowning him for saying that. Well, the Americans lost to Germany in the semifinals of the FIBA World Cup, so they're not going to be the best team in the world. So Noah Lyles is correct, and Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and all these other clowns in the NBA are wrong. You're wrong. Your sport is terrible. I know Jurg is a Heat fan, so the Heat get special dispensation from all of this. Good on you, Eric Spoelstra. But the rest of you that elected not to go play on this team, why in God's name was Bobby Portis on the USA national basketball team? Bobby Portis, the guy who made Stephen A. Smith cry on air when Rachel Nichols said he was available for the Knicks 3 years ago when they got Julius Randle? That Bobby Portis? Walker Kessler, who sounds like a guy who should be on like an REI ad or a Levi's commercial instead of a basketball player with that name? You're telling me your top guy is Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart and Tyrese Halliburton? Good players, don't get me wrong, but clearly they could not beat who was on Germany? The Wagner twins and Dennis Schroeder. And that was really it. And some guy that they pulled out from the beer hall from Munich. Really. Also, earlier, you couldn't beat Lithuania. Lithuania, who back in 2004 authored the greatest upset, the most humiliating game of all time. And that's when in 2008 they were called the Redeem Team because they lost to Sarunas Jasikevičius, go you, and Lithuania. This is the problem. We talked about how USA Women's Soccer this year, World Cup, they lost all their mojo because they were playing horribly, and Vlatko got fired, thank God. Well, where's the same thing for Steve Kerr? Fire this man as national team head coach. Bring back Popovich. We need Popovich. He picks the right players, and he gets the USA back to where they belong. And incidentally, I hope the U.S. loses the bronze medal game to Canada, because that would just be phenomenal. Go Canadians. I think Canada would be a great bronze medalist. And Germany or Serbia, I don't care. Have fun. It'll be a great game in Philippines for all to enjoy. But not the Americans. Why? Because they're losers. And you know what else we say about losers? They're bums. Because you could not beat Germany or Lithuania in the World Cup of basketball. Shame on you. Go back on Twitter and apologize to Noah Lyles and say, you were right and we were wrong and we're sorry. You're not going to do it? Well, that's just because that's who you are as NBA players. Maybe because you're at Dunkin' all the time, because that's what you do at the time. You go to a sucky donuts franchise. That's what it is. And by the way, the new thing we're starting here, Arizona, the Grand Canyon is just a big hole in the desert. Stop it.
Wow. So Rick took out more heads, and if this podcast ever gets any kind of attention, I guess NBA players are going to be adding us very soon here.
We'll be headed to the hit list.
Oh my God. The entire current USA basketball team. I mean, I will say this. I actually was, from a international growth of game perspective, it was cool to see Germany win that game because I remember during the broadcast of the 2008 Olympics, the commentators talked about how Dirk Nowitzki's personal goal in his basketball career was to try to help Germany rise to a new level in international play. And to see it happen now, post his career, but I think he's still involved in the German national team. It's a really freaking cool thing to see.
It's been a great World Cup because I don't know if you saw what happened towards the classification games. South Sudan got an Olympic bid.
There you go.
South Sudan is run by Luol Deng and Royale Ivy. They literally brought that program from scratch. They were playing on flooded out courts basically, and then here they are going to the Olympics next year. Those are the stories that we want to hear. But if you think you call yourself the world champions in the NBA Finals, can you at least beat other teams that are in the world? Instead of being third or fourth place behind two European countries.
It would be nice to not feel like the fourth best NBA team.
Yeah.
Some real players out there. Because look, I get it. It's not worth the money for them. If they get hurt in that game, they could cost themselves millions and millions of dollars. That's the reality of it. But
listen.
You have to talk a big game, and then you can't even back it up. Let's go out there and win one, guys.
Listen. No one wanted the Charlotte Bobcats to be around, but here they are. So that's basically what it is, essentially.
I will say this: depending on who ultimately is willing to go to the next Olympics from the USA men's side, we might be having to have either in this Olympics or the next one, we might be seeing a redeem team too happening because.
Except there's going to be a problem if there's a guy from France that's 7'4" and has an 8.5-foot wingspan named Wembanyama on that team too.
Yeah.
So, I think the world's starting to pass the Americans by. unfortunately.
And especially like if Paolo Banchero hadn't, betrayed his entire country and he just played for Italy instead of, turning his back on them and playing for the USA.
Terrible.
Like it would be an even more interesting conversation, but unfortunately we can't bring the Italians in the convo.
You know what I found that was interesting too about that? Rondé Hollis Jefferson was like playing for either Jordan or Kuwait.
I think Jordan.
Yeah, he was like a dual citizen, which I think again great. You're building the game over there, but like it's interesting. Like you don't make the cut for the USA team, so you have citizenship for another country and you play there instead.
He balled out too. I hope he gets a training camp invite by somebody because he played really well.
And I hope it builds the game in Jordan. It really does. Can't do anything for the United States, but why not Jordan?
I mean, the next level for Jordan is to get sponsored by Michael
Jordan.
Yeah.
Well,
so, I mean, the joke writes itself.
As long as they're not sponsored by Kyrgyzstan, I think we're okay.
I don't think Kyrgyzstan's going to be in the basketball convo anytime soon.
Oh well.
But all that being aside, Rick, fantastic as always for the Rant Podium. And ladies and gentlemen, that does it for this week on the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. Football is back. The pick challenge for 2023 has begun. The chaos will truthfully ensue. And it's going to be a long season. This is the beginning. But it's going to be a fun one, to say the least. Thank you all so much for joining us on this week's edition of the show. We'll be back next week as we will celebrate our triumphs, bemoan the tragedies, review week 1, look to week 2, and talk about everything else in between, from the West Coast teams to the East Coast teams to those teams that don't deserve to win anything in New Orleans and Tennessee. Thank you all so much for joining us on the podcast that is here for fun, football, and plenty of chaos. We'll see you guys next week.
Truth bombs.